Do you ever notice how in fantasy novels, medieval villagers are often just peasants and the lord is just the lord? This simplistic view misses a rich, complex system that truly shaped medieval life. Today, on Beyond the Fantasy, we start to pull back that fantasy veil. For centuries during the Middle Ages, life for most people in the countryside revolved around the manor, the lord's estate and the village tied to it. It was an intricate economic and social engine. So why do fantasy authors so often gloss this over? Frankly, it's complex, requires deep research, and might seem less heroic than sword fights. But they're missing out on incredible story potential. Fantasy often lumps all common people into one generic peasant category, but the medieval reality, especially in well-documented periods like the 12th and 13th centuries, reveals a detailed social ladder. The people who worked the land were customary tenants called villeins. Their lives were governed by the custom of the manor, a complex set of rules that dictated their labour services, and a host of dues owed to the lord. They leased their land from the lord and partially repaid him in the form of labour on his land. This owed labour was only 3 days of the week. The rest of the week, the tenant could work his own land. Among customary tenants, a vergator, holding a larger measure of land, around 30 acres, known as a vergate, had different obligations than a half vergator with less land, who consequently owed less work. Their obligations weren't just vague toil. The custom of the manor specified particular tasks, from harrowing fields to collecting nuts, making hedges or working in vineyards. Below the vergators and half-vergators were the cotters, or cottagers. These villagers held almost no land and so subsequently owed almost no work on the lord's land. They mostly worked for wages as day labourers, sometimes for the lord directly, but most villeins paid out their labour and hired cottagers to do their owed work on the lord's land. Everyone, from the richest vergator to the lowliest cotter, still owed extra work at harvest. There were no exemptions. All this created a varied village landscape, far from the fantasy stereotype. This complex peasant world was itself managed. It wasn't just the lord giving orders from his castle. Fantasy might show a generic steward, but the manorial system had a distinct hierarchy of officials: the steward, the bailiff, and his helper, the reeve, each with vital roles within the manorial system. We will dive into those roles with more detail in the series. This detailed world of obligations, landholding, and local governance is the missing backdrop to so many fantasy tales. By understanding it, we see how much richer these stories could be.